Ladies and gentlemen, today is April 10th, 2018, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 367, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Kienan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to another show. Today we're going to be asking a very important question, and that is, of course, what is appeal? What is appeal? It is a word that is thrown around in many things in the industry, and it has to do with making characters look attractive, making them look appealing and amicable and relatable and all of those things. And we are going to be exploring what makes appeal today. In fact, I have come up with a couple different ideas for generating appeal and taking this and implementing it into your characters. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And over here, this is of course a continuation off of a tutorial I did a long time ago called Barbie Face Syndrome. You should go check that out as well if you have a chance. It outlines the basic underlying principle of appeal, and that is, how do you create characters that feel different and fresh and not fall into the trap of saying, okay, I need to create an attractive looking female. Let's go to the attractive looking female face in my head, and you do the same face over and over again, hence the Barbie head. And we're going to be expanding upon that, and I want to take you over to 3/4 because in the previous episode, we focused on straight on. We were focusing on proportions, as well as how to generate a face from that angle. However, I want to take it over to and start generating new dynamic angles, as well as expressing ourselves with different structures, with highly crazy, exaggerated structures for the faces, as well as expressions. And we're going to be putting all of these things together today to create our character, okay? And we're going to be doing this girl right here, this short-haired, cute blonde girl. So let's go ahead and get started with that, okay? So let's go ahead and get rid of these notes here, because as you can see, we have the general, these are our building blocks that we can build with, right? We have the hair, eyebrows, eyes, iris, nose, lips, cheeks, jaw, chin. All of those things, think of it as you're creating a character on Bloodborne or Dark Souls Remastered, which is about to come out, which I'm very excited for. Yeah, it's very similar to creating a character for your favorite game. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today, but we're going to be pushing it even beyond the limits of what was ever thought possible. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. And the thing that we're going to be starting with today is structure. We're going to be starting with structure because as you look over here, you can see that there's a structure behind this face that's created with a circle. It's created with this circular shape right here. And then we have the chin shape, okay? Everybody's heard of this before. And we're going to take that and we're going to begin generating a new character. So let's go ahead and get into that. New layer. And we're going to be working with this face right here. New layer, and feel free to follow along with me. I hope you are. Let's go ahead and draw in that circular shape. Very easy. And let's go ahead and draw in that chin shape. Now this is usually how I do it. This is usually how I do it right here. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be changing that up. Let's say, what would happen if we took this circular shape and we made the chin shape instead very, very small? What if we made it very small? Oh, then we're probably going to be getting into a bit more of like an anime style. A bit more of an anime style. And so because of that, this is where we start to talk about balance. Now, we can do things such as, okay, this is where I like to default to. I say, okay, well, when I have the shrinking down of the chin, something else needs to be enlarged in its place. Think of it as a balloon. As you squeeze it in one area, the air must expand to a different area. You can't just squeeze a balloon into nothing without popping it. So think about, as you shorten one thing, in this case, the chin gets shortened. What if we made the eyes bigger? Now again, this is what I always default to. So this is just to kind of stay in a very kind of safe place. A very safe place to get started. So you guys have seen me make this face a million times before, right? But let's say, what if we wanted to do something a little bit different? Okay, there's our little happy anime face. Or cute little anime girl face. Easy, easy, easy. Okay, and that is what you would call balance. It's still balanced because something else has taken its place. So let's go ahead and set that one off to the side, and I want to make a new one. So let's say, what if we ended up making the face extremely long? This is another thing that I've played around with in my day here. So let's say, what if we made the face extremely long? Now this is another technique, or basically this is the principle of making caricatures. Caricatures allow you to take something that is familiar, such as yourself or your friend, and you can look at that caricature, and it represents that person. But it's done in a very crazy, warped, like a much different way. I like to think of it as you've told the same story, but you've done it with a different flavor. You've done it with a different tone, a different narrator. Okay? So you stretched out this face. Now, what would happen if we took these eyes and we also made them very stretched out? What if we took the same, basically the same style that we're working with here, and let's make everything very long. Think of it as very long, straight shapes. And what we're doing here is we're laying out a new face, and we're setting up new ground rules with each one. Okay? So this could be a possible new face. And I really like exaggerating things right off the bat. So I want to make a bunch of different ones here. And then we're going to really delve into one and really flesh it out. Okay? Because the latest thing that I've been noticing is on the episodes, I tend to get kind of locked in to one option. And that is probably one of the biggest things, one of the biggest traps that all artists, including myself, fall into. We want the first option to always work. We're not willing to basically throw away something that we kind of feel okay about in pursuit of more options. So let's go ahead and continue with more of these. Let's say that I wanted to, let's go ahead and start with facial features. Let's say that I wanted to create a character with a large nose. Well, how do we go about doing that? Well, let's go ahead and put it more in profile here. So if we divide this face in half, it looks more like this. Now let's play around with that. How would we make a large nose character like this and still have it be appealing? How would you do that? Well, let's see. Okay, so we're putting extra air into the nose, as you could say. So what would we lose air in? Maybe the lips. Let's try making the lips extra small. Let's try making the lips small like this. And maybe the eyes can come down like this in this area. See, I would imagine they would look something like this. And right before your eyes, let's say that we have a flow. You also want to be thinking about flow in your faces. So let's say that we have, see how everything is like kind of moving towards the point of this nose? This is another thing that makes your characters feel like they are deliberately designed, as opposed to just, let's say, a great example, let's take this face up here, and let's go ahead and just do an overpaint of this. Let's say, oh, I know how to make an appealing character. All I have to do is just make one feature bigger, right? And let's say you did something like this. Well, see how now this looks out of place? See, we've made the nose technically as big as this one down here, but see how nothing has been changed to accommodate the new feature, the exaggerated feature? So automatically it's going to feel out of place. It's going to feel strange. It's going to look like a big old witch's nose, right? So what you need to do is you need to consider how is the rest of the face going to conform to allow this new feature to exist. And it needs to look deliberate. It needs to look designed. So let's continue with that, because I like this big nose. I like doing things that are a little bit more out of the realm of like traditional beauty. Trying to make a new character that looks attractive, a new character that looks very, very appealing, without having to resort to like, oh, let's make it have big eyes, a small nose, and large lips, right? I always like to play around with different faces to create different characters, different appealing characters. So this is another possibility. Another possibility. Kind of digging that. It's kind of cute. And this is actually very similar to the face that I used on Ashar, the Dragon Girl, for those of you who watched that episode a few weeks back. If not, I highly recommend you go and check that one out. So that one's pretty cute. I kind of dig that one. But see the flow? Can you guys see it more clearly now? See how everything flows into that nose? Everything flows into that, and it looks very deliberately designed. Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's do one more. Let's do one more. I'll set that off to the side. I'm actually really liking this long-faced one. Really, really digging that one. As we gain more, here's another good thing about gaining more options is that it allows you to compare and contrast to your previous iterations. And it will quickly get you on the track of feeling if you're on the right track, I guess you could say. Yeah, so getting more options allows you to really get a handle on what's going on. It gives you more things to compare to. So for this one, I'm going to go for a little bit more of a... So I've been really exaggerating structure here. Let's see if we can go for a more traditional face here. Let's have it pointing upwards. I want to have it pointing upwards. Now the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to go into the next thing, which is what we talked about at the beginning, and that is expression. Expression is another big thing that's going to tell a lot about your character and help to emphasize appeal. And that is something that I want to go into right here. Because I'm planning on making this character look happy. I'm planning on making this character look confident. They're going to have their chin upward. Their face is going to be looking upward. And I want you guys to notice how that is actually going to affect the entirety of the character. And I'm going to make it a little bit slimmer. I'm going to make this character's jawline just slightly slimmer. Maybe a large forehead. Let's go ahead and position the eyes. Something that I really like about doing the circle and the chin shape technique, using that technique, is I like to subdivide it. See how that line more or less goes through the center of the circle? This comes in really handy when I want to start saying, okay, well, where do we place the eyes? Imagine if none of these construction lines were there and we just had a shape that was kind of like this, right? You're like, okay, where do I put the eyes? Maybe one here and one here. Not necessarily a bad thing. You could have a big forehead, but it's really important that you have these construction lines, because then you could say, okay, looks like the eyes are appearing towards the bottom of the circle, giving you a general placement and a general measurement to go off of, which leads to drawing the same face every time, because that was something that puzzled me for many, many years. When I was creating my comic book characters, I would always say, shoot, I can draw this character looking good from one angle, but as soon as I want to draw them in the next panel, something is like slightly off. The eyes are a little bit too far apart, or too close together, or too far up, too far down. So having these things here will help you out. So let's go ahead and create these eyes. Let's create some happy eyes. Notice that you can make things look happier if you have a bit of like a straighter line on the bottom, because it kind of evokes this type of feeling, right? When you would smile, right? It kind of pushes your cheek up towards the eye. So if you want happier eyes, kind of more, also it could be attributed to sad eyes too, because, you know, commonly I like to do almond eyes, right? Like the kind of sexy, seductive almond eyes like this, right? But again, that's another common thing that I run into. I even kind of did it on this girl over here. You can see that's the general kind of almond eye shape, or the upward slant. So make sure that you watch that carefully as well. You can see I did it up here. So for this character, I want to make sure that I am breaking new ground, trying new things. Let's go ahead and do this type of eye. Let's go ahead and bring it down the other way. Okay, let's have the nose be extra angled downward. Let's kind of squish it in like this. All right, and see, look at how cool that is. Now I can say, oh, the nose goes right at the bottom of that circle. Let's go ahead and erase a little bit of our construction lines. And let's go ahead, and here's a really easy way to draw in mouths. Here's the way that I do it 90% of the time. I'll put one line to show the edge of the mouth, and then I'll draw in another line like this. And this can be like super exaggerated to show a huge smile like this. It can be really small to be like a cute little kind of cat smile. You can go many different ways with it, but for this one, let's try something like this. Oh yeah, and making a smile is actually very easy, because all you have to do is draw another line down like this, and then connect it like that. And you can actually connect this one too. For smiles, I tend to leave a little bit of an opening down here. I leave an opening, I don't connect this line. And the reason why this looks good is because it's mimicking the light getting caught on the... this used to puzzle me all the time. It mimics the light that's caught on the bottom lip. And because of that, the contrast, basically it's a bright spot being contrasted to your teeth, right? Both are very bright colors. So what happens usually is there would be a shine there. Like if I were to draw in this lip, the bottom lip, this is about where the shine would be. And that is why oftentimes it looks better to not connect this line here for the teeth. As soon as you do that, it looks okay, but I find that putting that little opening there looks quite nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw this in. Maybe we'll give her some freckles. But see how already we have a much more interesting looking face. Let's say I want to give her like bigger eyebrows too. I'd like to give this character some bigger eyebrows. And see, now we're starting to get somewhere, albeit it is much more stylized than what we had before. Let's see if we can bring this, because this is the other thing that I want to do. Let's say that you draw a face like this, and you like the way that it looks, but you say, oh, well, I want it to look more realistic. Let's dial it more into the realistic territory, to the point where it feels less anime. And I actually want to mix this, maybe these two faces together. Yeah, sure. We'll mix those two faces together because I like the elongated face. So this is where you can start going into a new type of territory, and that is adjustments. Adjustments while still maintaining appeal. And let's go ahead and do that the correct way because I totally messed that up. There we go. Something that I like to do as I move forward is I'll darken my sketches a little bit. I do that just by hitting Control-U to bring up the Hue tool panel. And then I'll move the lightness down. There we go. I'll take these previous faces and let's go ahead and just merge those together. Merge those babies together. Hey, I got them all on the same layer. That's awesome. Let's make them smaller. Just so we have some extra room to work. I don't want to make it too small, so I want you guys to be able to download this at the end. Take a look for yourselves, and I want it to be semi-high res. So let's go ahead and take this face and let's make it more realistic. And the way that we're going to do that is, well, simultaneously kind of bringing what we liked from the previous version with the longer face. So here's something that's really cool that you can do. I would highly recommend that you grab the lasso tool, which is up in the top left corner right there. It looks like a lasso. Go ahead and start grabbing pieces of the face like this. And then what I would recommend that you do is click the uppermost tool, which is the move tool, and then hit Control-H. And what that's going to do is it's going to hide these, what we call marching ants, because, hey, looks like marching ants on a log. Hit that, it's going to hide it. And then with your finger of choice, click the arrow keys, and just like that, you can begin moving the facial structure around. And look at that. It's now become like the sliders on your character creation. So start moving things around and see if you can find something that you like. And you can do this with the eyes. You can shrink things down like this. By the way, I'm hitting Control-T to go to transform. And then here you can kind of change the size of the eyes, which may work. For trying to move this into a more realistic territory, I would highly recommend that you, yes, do shrink down the size of the eyes just a tiny bit. If we're moving into realistic territory, we also want to continue. We want to ask ourselves, where is the actual tear duct and the connection of this eye? And where is the structure of this nose? Let's go ahead and erase a little bit of this here. And let's really lay in the structure of this nose. So where does it go? Where's the bridge of the nose? Where is the depth that is happening in here? We need to show that. And then right before your eyes, you will begin seeing a face appear. So we know that this is the edge of the nose. Here's a really cool tip for drawing noses. I like to think of it in two planes, right? So let's say this is the top plane, and then underneath you have, right, here's the nostril, and there's the bottom plane. There's technically a third one in there too, but that's the shadow that goes back to your face. Don't need to worry too much about that. For simplified drawing, just focus on these two planes, the upper one and the bottom one, commonly drawn with a shadow. So you can see that's what I'm doing here. There's the upper plane right there, and then here is the lower plane. Another tip, which makes your noses look amazing. Try not to emphasize this line too much. Try not to emphasize, because that's a part of the skin that's folding over and connecting to your cheek. So a hard line there, similar to what we were talking about with the teeth and the lips, there's not that big of a contrast that's happening there. So because of that, you don't need to have a line there. But here's the next tip that I will tell you that always looks awesome. You put a little bit of shading like right here on the nose. It tends to look really nice. And the reason why that is because, and make sure that you press lightly as you do that. it looks good because it shows that there's a little bit of rounding on the flesh there, and that it's not a straight. Remember how I was talking about these planes over here? You've got your plane at the top. You want to stay away from making this look flat. This should not look flat ever. If it looks like a popsicle stick, if it looks like a straight up and down, a lot of people kind of do this thing. They'll draw that shape, and then they'll try to like connect a nose in there. Don't do this. Don't do this. I say it because I used to do it all the time, and it looks terrible. Okay? Unless that's your exact style that you're going for. I find that putting a little bit of this shading in there, again, it helps to break that up. Helps to break it up. So break it up, people. Break it up. So let's continue with this. Actually, really digging this. This face is already looking very cute. Another thing that comes in handy when you are rendering irises is just take the eraser side of your stylus and kind of just chip away at this. Chip away at this, because this is really cool because you can immediately start playing around with different sizes of the iris. You can make really large ones like this, or you can make your eraser really small, and you can make a really subtle tiny one and have large pupils, which I tend to like because I come from drawing, well, in my comic style, my characters didn't have any irises. They had button eyes. So if the character had blue eyes, like the entire eye was just kind of like a dark blue, right? And it would look something like this, right? They would have lighter eyes, but there's no real iris. But in this case, if there does need to be an iris, I tend to go for the subtler, more slim ones. But again, something I would highly recommend you play around with yourself. And we've got ourselves a good looking, appealing character. Now let's go ahead, and I would highly recommend that you get in the habit of doing this. When you have a sketch that you like, grab it, hold Alt, make sure that you have your movement tool selected at the top left, hold Alt and drag it. What that's going to do is it's going to create a duplicate version of it. Another shortcut that you can use is Control-J. Control-J duplicates the current layer that you're working on and allows you to continue working. And the reason why you want to do this is because you might start to make changes to the face, or you're going to be making changes to the face. You want to be able to compare back. And as I go, you can see here that I'm still kind of just erasing some of these remaining guidelines because, another good reason why it's good to duplicate, because you want to be able to look back on this and say, how did I get this face started? How did I get this face started? Or even afterwards, say you get to a face that you like, you can do what I did here, and you can actually lay out the structure for yourself, so you can figure out the measurements for creating this character's face over and over again. All right, but we need to get back to this because this face is already looking very cute, and I'm liking it a lot. And why is that? Because we're using expression, ladies and gentlemen. Expression. It's a big thing. But let's start getting more into the nitty-gritty because we want to start adding more realistic things to this character, such as lips. What are some treatments for the lips? Well, I'm going to show you mine. Here's how I like to do the top lip. The top lip, I gently press with my stylus like this and create a shadow right there. See how that immediately becomes the lip of the character? Now what's really cool about this is, similar to our irises, we can make a large lip by adding additional shadow. However, you can see now that because of the large lip, it's getting a little bit too close to our nose. So because of that, what I would recommend that you do is grab that mouth and move it down a tad bit. Give it a little bit more room to breathe. You got a little bit of room between your lips and your nose, hopefully. If not, don't worry. You are a unique snowflake all to yourself. But in this case, this person is going to have a little bit more room between their nose and their lips. And so that's a good way to get started. But how do you do the bottom lip? Another thing that's puzzled me for many a year. And here's the easiest way that I've found to do it. Is you do the same thing, but you don't want to connect it like this, right? See, once you connect like this, now all of a sudden she's got a Ronald McDonald smile. Don't want to do that. You want the bottom lip to be much more subtle. So do me a favor and do it like this. Try something like this. Draw it just in this general area. Kind of keep it smaller, like around this, kind of that size. And then feel free to put a little shine on there. Little shine on there. Okay, and you might end up getting something that looks like this. Next thing that you want to do is take a look at the teeth. Let's say that we wanted our teeth to have a little bit more design to them because currently they're just a white space. Here's something that you can do. You can add a little bit of a line here. Here's something that I want you to avoid at all costs and never do this ever. in your life as an artist. Don't you dare ever start drawing gums like this. Don't ever do this and start drawing every individual tooth, okay? This is something that I did once in my life, and don't ever do this because it just doesn't work that way. You can even see in real life, it doesn't work that way. Look at my teeth here. Not only because they're blown out because of the contrast and it makes it look nicer, but see how as my teeth show, they begin to blend into one shape. And that is how we actually perceive teeth. We are looking at the lack of contrast in these pearly whites, and they are becoming one shape. So that's why it looks weird when you draw teeth like this. You don't want to draw teeth like this. However, what you want to do is you want to draw the darkest parts, which actually we drew just the gums in there, and it doesn't look terrible. It doesn't look terrible. But here's what I'd suggest that you do for your teeth. Draw a line like this, just to show the edge of the tooth. And then over here, you can do this as well. Show where the teeth kind of connect, and you can do something like that. And then with that, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have yourselves a good-looking smile. A good-looking smile. It's actually not terrible looking, but it's also not amazing looking either. I don't know. Let's go ahead and see if we can fix that. Oh, and then we're going to move into something that I really wanted to show you guys, and that is overpainting. Overpainting. We're basically putting on color on top of this character, which is something that's really fun and easy to do at the end of all of this. And for that purpose, I could, well, up till now, I've been focusing on wherever you see light values or clear values, I've been using the eraser to get to that point, right? I've been using the eraser to get to that. But you can also eyedrop, and you can begin what I like to call just basically painting in whites. You can paint in and basically start grabbing grays. I have taught this in a bunch of different ways up till now, but I've realized now the easiest thing to do is just to say, like, paint in whatever way that you really want to, and paint in the easiest way that you can find, okay? And that is, for me, oftentimes once I'm getting to this point where I'm laying in detail, oftentimes I just don't have time to flip around my stylus all the time, so I'll just begin grabbing, like I'll eyedrop by holding Alt to grab white, and then I'll just begin painting in. Or let's say that I want this eye to be a little bit brighter. I won't try to go in there and like lightly press just enough so the eye becomes gray, right, with my eraser. I'll just grab gray and paint it. Now, the reason why I've taught you guys to only use the eraser before is because it makes it much easier. Remember we were talking about darkening lines? See how once you start painting those grays, technically, take a look at the teeth there, take a look at the teeth, because we painted in white, and technically everything else behind that white is clear. See how when we get rid of this, see how we have this alpha that's actually still being used. Now it makes it harder for us to darken our lines. I hope that makes sense. Because when we darken it, it's darkening everything that was there. But there is still a way around this, so I don't want you guys to worry too much. So let's go ahead and just go back to this point. Let's just continue painting with what we like, because I will show you a couple ways that you can color this at the end. All right, cool. So another cool thing to kind of bring things a little bit more realistic is you want to add a little bit of a dimple at the edge there. Show the folding of the skin that happens when the character smiles. And that can be done as simply as adding a bit of gray right here. And see, look at that. We've now added that fold of skin. A very, very subtle, but meaningful change. I really liked how skinny this character's nose was, how like pointed it was. Let's go ahead and bring that back into play. And let's go ahead and continue with the contours of the edge of the face, because this is, okay, so this line right here, this line is one of the most important and underrated lines in creating a character with appeal and creating a character that is recognizable. It is the outer edge of the face. It is the jawline, the cheek line, the chin. All of those things will make a big difference in your character. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. Let's hit Control J, and I want to show you how much this character's face actually changes as we do this. So this is character 1. Let me just go ahead and paint over this. Just go ahead and paint over this because I'm going to give her a completely different jawline and chin structure. And watch how the character changes. So let's go ahead and give her a much more rounded face. And watch how this character's entire identity changes. So there is 1. So changing back and forth, we have angular, right? Super stylized angular face, and then we have the round face. Now it feels a lot more, there's a lot more fat on the face. It's much more softer looking. The character could look a lot more friendly, which could be good. Let's go ahead and do another one. Let's create this one, and let's instead go for a super angular, gaunt face, very almost skeletal in nature. So let's go ahead and kind of keep those angles, but let's really exaggerate this chin, right? So it kind of goes in like this and exaggerate that jaw, kind of pull it in and go for the cheek right there, right? Now we have something that's looking like Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. And because of that, see how now we have another different character. Another different character is appearing here. Okay, so there to there, and there to there. See how both of those characters feel much different? Much, much different. However, I am personally liking this round face. However, I feel like this edge, this cheek is sticking out just a little bit too far. So let's go ahead and bring it in just a tad bit. Let's move this chin back. Again, all I'm doing here is I'm alt-clicking the background color. I'm just going to kind of shave that away. Think of it, now we're getting into what I like to call sculpting. We're almost sculpting this character into place. I'm going to move this chin back. Move this chin back to get something more along the lines of that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. This neck, however, is suffering now because the neck is connecting here, which it does not in real life. We want to make sure that the neck connects to the back of the head. It's coming from the back of the head. So let's go ahead and connect the chin where it is rightfully supposed to. Let's go ahead and paint in a little bit more white there. A little bit of shadow in this area. Cool. Cool. Not bad. Not bad. Let's go ahead and erase a little bit more of these guidelines here. Another thing that helps to pull your characters into a more realistic realm while still maintaining our appeal is to make sure that you consider the cast shadow that happens from the eyes. Make sure you consider the cast shadow that happens. So drawing in that little bit of gray on the upper white parts of the eye really helps to ground that well. And I kind of want this character's smile to be bigger. So I'm going to just play around with this. I'm going to grab this mouth. Let's expand it a little bit. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's hit Control H. That way we get rid of our marching ants. Let's go ahead and move this around a little bit. I'm grabbing the move tool. Oh yeah, you also don't have to use only the arrow tool, arrow keys, I've told you before. But you can also just use the move tool and move this to a place where you like. And that looks pretty good. That looks pretty dang good. So the next thing that I like is, hey, take a look at that. Now we can compare. Is there something that we are missing? Is there something that we've lost from adding this additional oh yeah, make sure that when you hit Control H, this is a common thing. You'll go to paint somewhere else, but because you've hidden the ants, you'll try to paint, it won't work. So if that happens, just hit Control D. That will deselect, and then you can automatically begin painting again. But now you can compare and contrast these two. Is there something that we lost? Is there something that changed? Is there something that you liked more about the one on the right versus the left? Are we adding detail or maybe changing the style but still retaining what we liked about the original? And these are questions that you should always be asking yourself. I always ask myself this. And it's one of the biggest reasons why I always keep my earliest sketches to refer back to. Because oftentimes basically the simplest form of what I liked is always contained in the original sketches. It could even go as far back as this one here. It's like there's something about this one that I like a lot more. There could be something in there. So don't delete your old sketches. Don't work just from one. Always have many that you can look back on. Okay? And that's a good question because we're going to be asking ourselves that as we continue. So let's go ahead and move forward with this. I'm going to go ahead and just draw in a little bit more of this body here. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the hair. Let's move on to the rest of the hair. Let's move on to this. So the hair is another big thing that we want to make sure that we get down pat. Hair is probably one of the another one of the main things that can help to differentiate your character. So here we have a very simple part line. We have the bangs kind of being pushed to the side and all that. But let's say that we wanted to begin exaggerating some of those. What if we took this bang and we made this thing really huge? What if we made this piece really big? I tend to try to take one piece and make it very distinguishable. Personal preference on my end. I like to make it very distinguishable from far away. Helps for creating video game characters or comic characters. Any character that's going to be viewed from far away, you always want some sort of call out. I call it a call out to be visible there. And then let's go ahead and take this hair, and it kind of goes like this. What if the entire hair as a whole just like kind of swooped in this direction? What if it went to the right in this case? If we had something like this. Hey, that's looking quite cute. That's looking quite cute. So now we have something that looks like this. Now see how just that shape alone gives us a character that is very, whoops, let me go ahead and move these faces out of here. Move them over here. Move that one up here. Ah! Aha! There we go. Now see how all these shapes as a whole are starting to, oh yeah, let me make sure that I tell you about the common pitfall as well. Is that, yes, anime does look good because it has big hair, but be careful of making it too big. Too big can sometimes be a problem. Okay? Because if you make this side big, and then you make this side big, and then you have everything spiky, you have everything being spiky, well, actually, it doesn't look bad either necessarily, but you start pushing into another type of territory. You start pushing into maybe like the Mega Man kind of really exaggerated hairstyles territory, which may or may not be what you're looking for. I have found that by keeping one edge of the hair kind of close to the edge of the head, again, we're talking about sort of, I guess we have unannounced, kind of like we're moving into creating appealing stylized characters, but still keeping them in a realistic realm. I think that's kind of what we're getting at here. But know that appealing characters can be done in any style, in any way. But often I find myself defaulting to a lot of... I think the reason why I want to push towards realism for these is because creating appealing characters in 2D is one thing, but specifically for concept artists, I want you guys to start thinking about how does this face, something like this, how do we take the principles of this face and start moving it to something that can be sculpted in 3D? How can this be moved into something that a 3D artist can take and make into something real? Because that is something that is very, very sought after in the video game industry. And too often people will be able to create a cool stylized face, but then it's left up to the 3D artist to interpret it. And if you have a great 3D artist, then that's awesome. But sometimes, I mean, it never hurts to spell things out. Figure out as many problems as you can. Try to avoid as many pitfalls as you can for your 3D artist, because they got enough stuff on their plate. They don't need to try to figure out a new style to try to incorporate your 2D comic rendering style into something that actually exists in 3 dimensions. Okay? So I think that's why. That's a subliminal thing that's going on there. I'm trying to help you guys. So yeah, and you can see here, by adding all this additional shading, you can then begin to see, oh yeah, I could see this existing in 3D. Once we start adding in little kind of touches like the eyelids, here's another thing that you can add in that will help to bring some additional life and realness to your character. Start adding in tiny little things like the eyelids, the bottom eyelids. The shape of the hair casts a shadow, so make sure you throw in that as well. Throw in the shadow of the hair. A little bit of shadow underneath the eyes helps, because we want to show the brow. The brow line actually casts a shadow downwards. Okay? Cool. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking pretty good. I think we're going to be moving on to some color here in just a moment. That'll be the final thing that we'll wrap up with. Oh yeah, and she actually needs an ear. I just realized that. She needs an ear and a sideburn. Let's not forget that. Easy. Easy. Let's give her like a tech kind of neck piece here. Easy. Easy, easy, easy. Love it. That's my general tech piece thing. I've been wanting to go into armor as well. There's a lot of stuff that I've learned about creating armor that I think could really benefit you guys. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Let me know. Because I think that's something that I could delve a little bit deeper into. So yeah, I'm digging that. Oh, I need to tell you guys about another really cool secret, and that is flipping the canvas. Let me go ahead and save this really quick. Let's talk about flipping your layer, or in this case, the canvas. Layer goes a lot quicker. So hit Control-T to bring up the transformation tools on your current layer, and then right-click it with your stylus or mouse, and then go to Flip Horizontal. What that's going to do is it's going to flip your character, and you are going to see it with new eyes. Isn't that interesting? You've been looking at this face for quite a while. Do you notice some things that might be off a little bit? Do some things look like they're getting pulled to the side too much? Or do you like that? Do you like that some of the things are a little bit exaggerated? Sometimes I find that my faces tend to kind of arc up in a strange way. They look angled or slightly distorted in a way. I can see that a little bit happening here, how it's kind of all getting pulled up and to the left a little bit. So that's actually quite easy to fix. All you have to do is hit Control-T, hit Control and grab this topmost transform tool, and you can grab it like this and see how that kind of pulls the face. Like oftentimes my faces tend to do this. They kind of get pulled off to one direction. For whatever reason, I don't know. But you can then kind of pull it the other direction, like right around there. I think it looks good. Hit Enter to save that new transformation. And there you go. Now you've got a new face. Now you've got a new face. I'm really glad we're going to get into color with this, and I hope you guys don't mind chilling and relaxing with me for a little bit, because color is another big thing that adds to appeal on a character. And that's going to touch on another thing that I think is why it's so hard to describe what appeal is, because it has to do with so many different things. But really, if you were to break it down to its most general root, it is something that is pleasing to look at. It's something that is aesthetically pleasing. And throughout this entire tutorial, I have taught you guys about how to balance faces. I've taught you guys how to keep things in mind without exaggerate. You can exaggerate, but don't exaggerate too much. Think about more case in a practical terms. How is this going to translate over to a 3D model? How is this going to exist in a real space? Can it exist in a real space? And if it doesn't have to, here's the cool part. If it doesn't have to, what other rules can I break? What other rules can I break? Because you can break a lot more rules in 2D than you can in 3D. At least in most cases from what I've found. So if you're not limited to 3D, then I would ask you, how can you push it even further? How can you make something look appealing but exaggerate it even further? But for the purpose of this, and honestly what I'm trying to teach you guys to do, I would highly recommend that you always keep that in mind. How do these things look from 3 dimensions? How is this going to translate to 3D? Okay, so with that, I think we're about ready to go into color. Let's get into some color. Really digging that. That's a cute face. That's a really cute face. Okay, so there's a couple ways that we can do this. One is we can hit multiply. We can go to our layer properties down here. We can select multiply. However, we're going to run into a little bit of an issue, because I always tell you guys that I like to make my canvases, I don't like to make them straight white, because actually even straight white, it still has that distortion there. Do you see how, because we selected multiply and we painted with, here's why. We selected multiply and we were painting with something that wasn't completely white. So because our canvas by itself was already slightly dark and we painted with that, setting it to multiply is darkening what's behind it. So you can see in here, the problem that we're having is that we've got a little bit of a chin strap. Got some facial hair going on, which may or may not be what you're into. But for the cases of this drawing, it's not what we're trying to achieve. So here's the next thing that we can do. And I've talked to you guys about this in the Lines with Life episode. Actually, I've done this so much, I'm not actually going to point you back to that one, because I'll just demonstrate it again. Why not? Actually, if you want to go watch the Lines with Life one, I don't care. Go ahead. I appreciate that you guys get good value out of these. And if you can get more, then please do. So let's go ahead and group this. Let's get rid of everything. Let's get rid of everything but our face. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that face. I want you to duplicate it. Actually, I guess you don't need to necessarily duplicate it. But I want you to hit Shift-Control-Alt-E, and that's going to merge everything into one layer. It's going to merge your entire thing into one layer. Then I'm going to ask that you hit Control-U, take that saturation bar, pull it all the way to the left. Then go to Image Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast. Use Legacy because it looks better. And then I'm going to go ahead and ask you to bump up the contrast and bump up the brightness so you have a good kind of ratio between kind of like your darks and lights. Make sure that the brightest points are straight white and that the darkest points are black. But don't go too far because then it starts to distort the picture. Somewhere maybe right around there looks good. Maybe right around there. That looks great. Okay, now the next step is very, very simple. You just have to go to Channels. Go all the way down to the bottom right. Click that little box that looks like it's the marching ants box right there, right next to the one with the hole punched in it. Click that, and then you'll see there are marching ants all over your piece. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna hit Shift-Control-I, and basically what this has done is it's selected all of the. You've gone to Channels because you're selecting all of the white pieces. You're selecting basically all of the white parts of your drawing. And then hitting Shift-Control-I inverts it. So now can you guess what you have selected? That's right. You have your character selected, and you can even see it right there. Create a new layer. And if I lost you there, don't worry, rewind it, watch it over again. Create a new layer, and just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and pick a color that we like. I'm going to choose purple. And then go to Edit Fill. That's going to fill your, there we go. Edit Fill, fill with the foreground color. And what that just did is it filled the selection of your character with the color that you chose, and look at that, it's completely see-through. It's completely see-through, which is going to come in handy in about 2 seconds because we're going to color it. So let's get into it. Okay. Oh yeah, and you can take that previous layer that you had. That was just for getting the selection. You can feel free to delete that. Not important. Not important at all. Now here we go. Here's the next thing. I'm going to go ahead and darken this layer down because I want to be using vivid colors. This is something that we went into last week, talking about darkening down your canvas to make things appear brighter. It just makes your colors look a lot better. Let's go ahead and start coloring this character because this is going to launch into the final thing that I wanted to talk about with appeal. An appeal is creating something that is attractive, something that looks healthy, something that looks relatable. And that can be all kinds of different things. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be healthy, but it needs to be something that is interesting. Now, this also goes into creating colors. And I want to actually, since we're on this, you guys have been patient. Let's go ahead and let's launch into that. Let's make a couple different variants of color. Let's start with 2. I don't want to overshoot it because my spidey sense is tingling. I think we've done a good job today. I want to make sure that you guys get some good value and that this doesn't go for too long. So let's make a couple different color variations here. One, I am going to do a very kind of like tan skin, very tan, kind of very healthy looking skin. But then I'm going to show you another one which is going to be a very kind of pallid, pale skin. So here is tip number 1 with creating a healthy looking skin. You want to add what I like to call pigment. Pigment, hey, you can see pigment pretty well today because I've been out in the sun and I got super sunburned on my nose. So see how the nose has a very subtle red pigment to it? It also occurs on your cheeks, on your lips, very obviously, very easy to see. And we're going to go ahead and duplicate those feelings or duplicate that look on our character. So let's go ahead and throw in some redness on the cheeks, a little bit of redness on the nose, some redness on the lips. See how immediately that gives us a little bit more of a nice look. Just more of a nice look. Let's go ahead and add in a little bit more lights here. Let's add in some lights. Great places to add light are on the forehead. The forehead is a great place to add light. Don't want to make this too bright. Great places to add light are here on the nose, the cheeks, the upper part of the lip. And then the way that you blend this is, again, you don't want too hard of shadows. You don't want the shadows on your nose to look like this and the shadows under your eyes to look like that, right? It starts to look, there's too much contrast there. Okay, you got to watch that. Okay, but what you want to do, however, is begin getting in there and start blending these together. Blend these together, but allow the brightest parts to be in those areas that you had already chosen. Okay, down here by the chin, you don't need to worry too much. A little bit of light gets caught right there. But in general, I found that creating these kind of nice saturated warm tones in the skin tends to make it look very, very inviting. It makes it look very healthy, very beautiful. So definitely roll with that. But it's not the only way that you can do it. Another thing that you're going to run into as you're painting pictures in this manner is that your lines are eventually going to get in the way, and that is okay. And these are specifically in points like this. See how we wanted that lip to look red, but because of the color of the line, it kind of dilutes it, makes it look muddy. That is a very simple thing to fix. All you have to do is go to your line layer. In this case, it's layer 21. Click on this button, this magical button right... Wait, where is it? Where is it? Am I losing my mind? Oh, yeah, there we go. It's lock. I totally lost track of it. It's right there, that little checkerboard right there. That will lock your pixels of your lines. And then you can go about coloring them any color that you wish. And I've found that coloring your lines red in areas of the face, see, look at that. It adds that life right back in. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And for the more subtle areas, you can make it actually quite bright. Like here, you make it bright, right there, make it bright, there, there. See how that naturally makes things a little bit more subtle. A little bit more subtle. Let's go ahead and get back to this. Let's talk about more colors. Let's talk about more of these colors. So you've got this nice tan skin. Actually, I want to darken it down even more. Let's go ahead and make sure we have those cast shadows in these areas. Let's make sure that we have plenty of tan skin for our character. We can add a little bit more shadow in those areas. And this is where it's really fun to just experiment, ladies and gentlemen, and I highly recommend that you do this. This is a great time to experiment, play around with your colors, because this also is another great exercise in learning about the 3 dimensions of your character's faces. Learning to translate what is 2D into 3D. And is a very, as I said, sought after skill. Don't see it enough. So take it and run with it. Tell them KNKL sent you. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in the blonde on this hair. Let's make this beautiful bright blonde. I'm also a big fan of contrast from the skin to hair. I really like to show that contrast. Just that's another part of appeal is allowing, like, try to stay away from, not necessarily stay away from, but I tend to, because it's all about readability, right? At a distance, you want your character's face and hair to read as 2 different shapes, as opposed to having bright skin and bright hair and bright clothes. They're just going to turn into this giant blob of bright values, which can be good depending on what game you're going for. But in terms of just kind of generally speaking, I like to keep my characters with contrast in the different areas of interest. Okay, here's another really fun thing. I always do this every time, but I like to put the eye color on a different layer because eye color actually plays a huge part in determining the appeal of your character. See how these red eyes feel much different than these blue eyes? And similarly, kind of like these kind of hazily brownish eyes, you can even play around with the darkness of them. See how making them dark changes the character. It changes the appeal and the feeling of the character. So I highly recommend that you guys try this out for yourself. And again, the eyes do that for me more than anything. But for this one, I'm going to make blue, and I'll kind of desaturate them a little bit. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and put some additional brightness on the lips. Cool. Cool. Very cute. All right. Before we get too attached to this one, we need to move on. I'm going to make these a little bit more kind of whitish blue. Aha! There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Looks great. Let's put that nice hot highlight on the hair. There we go. Look at that. See how the contrast of like the blue highlight versus the warm color of the hair also gives us an interesting look. Gives us an interesting look. Cool. Awesome. Feeling great, feeling fine. Let's move to the next one, and then we're going to wrap it up. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a nice pale face. So, pale skin. I love how this has just completely changed into a different tutorial at this point. Pale skin is really fun because remember how we were talking about using very warm colors in the skin over here, staying in these oranges and reds. That still happens in pale skin. However, I want you guys to start moving more towards purples in pale skin. Purples and very like magentas tend to look very good on pale skin. Case in point, check it out. Check this out. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of that pigment to these cheeks. See how once it starts getting too pink, it already feels out of place. Already feels out of place. Let's keep it towards those cools. Let's keep it cool. There you go. There you go. Cool. And then as you add shading to the skin, again, also see how we're in these oranges? Stay away from those oranges. Move towards purples and reds, magentas. Kind of keep it desaturated a little bit too. Shade your skin with this. Maybe that's a little too purple. Shade your skin with this. There we go. There we go. And then as it goes towards the brighter areas, then you can get mega, mega bright. Okay? Mega bright. We're talking like this. Okay? Put a little bit of light on the cheeks, a little bit of light on the nose, light on the lips. There you go. There's your base coat. Let's go ahead and blend it together. Ladies that do your makeup, I'm sure this feels very natural for you. Me being guy, a little bit lacking on experience here, but I imagine it's kind of the same thing. Let's give it a go. Let's go ahead and saturate just a little bit more in this area. Saturate just a tad more. There we go. Let's do that same trick with the lines. Let's go ahead and lock them up. Lock them up and paint in those reds. Paint in those reds and lighten it up, especially for these areas like the nose. Feel free to make them kind of saturated. Looks pretty good too here. Saturating oftentimes looks pretty good. That might be a little too much. Bring it down. Down more. There we go. There we go. That's feeling about right. That's feeling about right. And feel free to paint the edges of the face too. Edges of the face tend to take this color quite well. All right, next up, let's go ahead and continue with the eyes. Let's go ahead and play around with like these reddish eyes. I think red eyes would look pretty cool here. Again, they're on their separate layer. Mess around with them, see what you like. Oh, I kind of like these like magenta eyes. That looks really cool. I think it's because it helps to balance out the feeling of the purples in the skin. And going back to what we were talking about with appeal. Now this is a much more, it's still like a brighter, almost pale looking skin, but see how there's like a rhyme and a reason to it. There's a deliberate design that's happening within this. And this all equates to what we like to call appeal. There's a little bit of color boomerang that's happening in here as well. Color boomerang is a general term for how color behaves and why it looks good. And that's because, as you can see here, even though it's very subtle, do you notice how in all of the darkened areas or all of the shadow areas, we are moving down and to the right? We're not just going darker like this. We're not shading our skin by saying, okay, here's the brightest part of the skin. Well, to shade it, let's just go straight down, right? Because once you start dropping this color in, see how that just feels muddy? It doesn't look right. It doesn't look right at all. But as soon as we take that color and we move over and to the right, so saturating, as well as adding a little bit of pink to it, see now that color, whoops, that color automatically feels much more natural. Okay, so let's finish it off with some hair. And then we're going to call it good, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to call it good. So here's a really, really fun thing to do with hair, specifically dark hair. I found this works best on. Color the top portion of the hair and then color the bottom portion, but leave a little strip in between. And you will notice that you have automatically created a band of light. You've automatically created your highlight on the hair. And that's something we can all get behind. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. You can even add in a little bit more additional. I'm just grabbing this kind of color from the skin and adding that back in. That looks pretty cool. Looks pretty cool. I think that because of this darkened color of the hair, this side needs to be a little bit darker on the skin. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, painting in those eyes. That looks great. That looks great. And see, now you have two different characters with two different hairstyles, or two different color schemes. Both have been made to look appealing, and I've shown you guys a little bit of the process with what goes into the mindset of creating something that's appealing, and most importantly, translating it over to something that can be made into a 3D character. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for joining me on YouTube. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Kienan Lafferty. Oh, of course, as always, if you'd like to download this as well as all the other PSDs, there's 100 of them. 100 plus on Patreon. Go on over here and download, pledge today. And thank you to everyone who has been supporting the show. It's always appreciated. I will continue these till the end of the eons, the end of the time, the end of the earth. And yeah, so that's gonna end. I hope you guys got some good value out of this. Thank you guys so much for joining me. As always, I'm gonna leave you with some lovely Lane, and until next time, you guys take care. See ya.